Hello and welcome to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. We're here to look ahead to the other round of matches in the last 16 of the competition. Last week we had some great games we enjoyed. We had some winners as well that we picked out on the podcast, so we enjoyed them as well. And we're here to try and pick out some more victorious selections from this week's fixtures. I'm joined by Mark O'Hare, Carlo Garganese and Ian Broadrick. So it's a full house to look forward to the four fixtures that we've got in Europe's Premier Club competition this week. Hello, guys. We've got a busy show, so we've got lots to get through. So let's get straight to it. The first game that we're going to talk about is probably the standout tie this week, if not in the last 16. It's Real Madrid against Manchester City. Manchester City, who, by the way, are still the favourites to win the Champions League. They're also the favourites to win at the Bernabeu. You can get them around about 2.42 to win on the night, 2.86 for Real Madrid to win at the Bernabeu, and the draw around about 3.82. Real Madrid coming into the game off the back of a really disappointing result at the weekend. They were beaten 1-0 at Levante. City coming into the game after beating Leicester by a 1-0 scoreline, grinding out that victory. Eden Hazard picking up an injury for Real Madrid in that game as well at the weekend, so he's going to be missing the City clash. Once again, Real Madrid not putting away chances in the final third, which has been perhaps the story of their season. Mark, what's your angle for this game, and why are City such clear favourites?
Well, I mean, it's pretty dull, but it's all down to the underlying metrics, really. And Manchester City are still the most dominant team in Europe, despite their position in the Premier League, according to the metrics that drive these kind of sophisticated betting models. Hence why they're still favourites to win the Champions League outright as well. But yeah, it's a really interesting tie, really interesting game. There's a lot of pressure on both sides. City will obviously the desperation to win this competition anyway, but with the Premier League out of sight and a potential ban coming their way as well, kind of heaps a bit more pressure on them. Real Madrid coughing up that position at the top of La Liga with two pretty ordinary performances against Celta and Levante as well. So I look at City. They went very strong against West Ham last week, went very strong again against Leicester at the weekend. Surprised, really, he did go quite so strong, Pep Guardiola, but clearly he's trying to build a bit of rhythm, bit of momentum coming into this tie. He got another hour out of Laporte at the weekend as well, which is significant, and it's not surprising, really. City have get their back-to-back clean sheets in the Premier League for the first time since October, and Laporte has been in the team for both of those games. So the only player missing at the weekend was Sterling, and the word is he's going to be fit and available for selection for this match as well. So they do arrive in decent nick, but I don't know. I think I might be disagreeing with the lads in this conversation by saying I think City might be slightly overestimated in this game. It's a first leg knockout tie. I think 2.4 quotes are a little bit short for me. I was expecting something closer towards a sort of 2.7 each or two, a bit of a pick 'em really for this tie. It's still a first leg knockout tie away at the Bernabeu against a Real Madrid team who are still pretty strong despite what we've seen in recent weeks. They've got a decent history of knocking out English sides in the knockout stages of the Champions League. Zidane's never actually lost a knockout tie in the Champions League, which is incredible, really. And I know their focus is on La Liga this year, but that's not going to mean anything on Wednesday night when this game comes around. Forget that the Clasico is this weekend. It's all about this match on Wednesday for Real Madrid. And I think we've seen a different side to them compared to recent years this season. They're a little less glitzy, bit more robust, defensively rigid. I think Mendy in for Marcelo at left back certainly is an upgrade defensively, and I think he'll switch back to the sort of 4-4-2 that we've seen in many of the big games under Real Madrid with Zidane, potentially Isco playing off Benzema, and I think they're a threat. And I think I'd rather be with Real Madrid with a quarter goal start at 1.83 even backing City with the minus. As I say, it's a high pressured game. Real Madrid at home at the Bernabeu in the Champions League are normally reasonably reliable in that sort of sense. They've scored goals at this level all the time. I can also see why people would want to back goals in this game. So much attacking quality on both sides of the pitch. But yeah, it's not a match I'm kind of attacking with real confidence or by the prices and where the market is at the moment. I just think City might be slightly overestimated.
Okay, but potentially backing Madrid with a Asian handicap could be of interest. Carlo, can you see City doing something at the Bernabeu?
It's so difficult. I'm with Mark on this. I mean, I think it's impossible to call. Out of the four games, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have probably just favoured Madrid despite the odds. I mean, they started 2020 in great form, Madrid. I think they won the first 8 games of 2020. But obviously, like Mike said, the last 2 games, they've dropped points. They've let Barcelona overtake them in La Liga ahead of the Clásico this weekend. So it's really, really hard to call. You can make a case for and against both sides. I mean, Man City are incredible going forward. They score so many goals, but defensively, I think they're suspect. I think that there are issues at centre back and left back, which they've had throughout Pep Guardiola's time there. They've never solved those issues, and I think that's where Real Madrid can hurt them. But on the other side, even though Madrid defensively have been very good this season, I think only Liverpool have got a better defensive record in the top 5 leagues in Europe this season. Offensively, I think they sometimes come across a little bit toothless. I think Benzema's been their only consistent scorer this season. So if you're going to back a goal scorer in this game, you can't pick anyone. I think aside from Benzema, I think has 13 goals in La Liga. I don't think anyone else has scored more than 3 goals in the Real Madrid team. So, I mean, who do you back to score?
Sergio Ramos is their second top scorer. So there you go.
Sorry, yeah. No one from the midfield.
Yeah,
he scored 5 goals, I think. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. In the So I mean, and even Benzema has kind of gone off the boil a little bit in the last few weeks. He hasn't scored in 4 games. I think he's only scored 2 in 2020. One of those was against the second division team. So it's a really difficult game to call. And there are some really interesting subplots. Like Mark said, there's a lot of pressure on City because of the potential ban. This might be their last chance for a long time to win the Champions League. It's really hard to call. I cannot call it, but if you put gun to my head, I would say maybe a 1-goal victory for Madrid in this home leg.
Okay, all right. No guns here, but interesting to hear that. Okay, brothers, we sort of have to move on. Do you have anything you desperately want to say about this game?
Only that I think goals is probably the best player. Sorry, probably contradicting Carlo to a certain degree. So welcome, Carlo. This is what I do. I just think it's worth noting that, if you look at Real Madrid and Man City's record in the Champions League over the last few years, I think Real, in their last 18 home games, 17 of them have had 3 or more goals. In Man City's last 18 away games, 15 or more have had 3 or more goals. The way that Real Madrid have defended in the competition so far, setting aside their La Liga record, the way they've defended in the Champions League has been appalling at times. My way into this game would probably be to look to over 3 goals at a shared over evens. I agree that the match betting might be a bit could go either way. I understand why it's gone the way it has with the Hazard news and with the Sterling news, sort of both positives for Man City. But for me, taking over 3 goals is the way to go in this game.
Okay, let's move on and talk about Lyon against Juventus. Juve, who have been pretty highly fancied throughout the whole tournament, head to France. Lyon, 4.55 you can get them. You can get Juve around about 1.95, and the draw is 3.54. I was looking at Lyon's home record in the Champions League. 7 of their last 8 games at home in the Champions League have been draws. So that's something to bear in mind, particularly with the price at 3.54 for a stalemate. Obviously, Juve coming into the game, they're a point clear at the top of the Serie A table. They had a 2-1 win over Spal at the weekend. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo scoring in that. Lyon are 7th in Liga. They had a 2-0 win over Metz at the weekend. But in theory, this should be a relatively straightforward tie for Juventus, if not the first leg, which might be a little bit trickier away in France. Remember, Barcelona went there last season and drew 0-0 before winning 5-0, I think, in the Camp Nou in the second leg. Mark, could you see something similar happening there?
Not really, to be honest. I think Lyon, this is the most one-sided tie of all the last 16 ties, according to the qualify odds before last week. And it's hard to really disagree with that, because Lyon qualified despite winning only 2 games in the group stages, generated an expected goals out at 7.8, which is the lowest of all the qualifiers, despite being in the softest group, you could say, of Leipzig, Benfica and Zenit. And they've lost their captain and creative hub, Memphis Depay, to a long-term injury. Earlier in the season, their big summer signing, Jeffrey Adelaide, also a long-term injury as well. So they're missing 2 key assets going forward. Domestically, they went into the weekend before that Mets win in the bottom half for the first time since 1997. Their head coach, Rudy Garcia, is under huge pressure just because of his Marseille links, really, and the way Lyon have performed recently. They only had managed 5 shots at home to Strasbourg in their last home game, which is their fewest since December 2016 as well. And they've struggled in attack, and defensively they have looked a bit suspect too. So you mentioned that win away at Metz, and the opening goal came from a penalty. Metz then had the best player sent off, and Lyon scored the second deep in stoppage time. So I'm not reading a huge amount into that game, and they're not really regulars at this kind of stage of the competition. Their record of winning in sort of Champions League knockout ties is very poor over the last decade, as you'd imagine, since the money's kind of left the club. And I think Juventus, while they haven't clicked completely into gear under Sarri, they are making small steps of progress. You mentioned Ronaldo, obviously in banging form, and club record or league record form, you could say, after the weekend. Chiellini made his return from injury, which is a big bonus. Bonucci was banned domestically, so he'll be rested and fit for this game as well. And last year, I think Juventus lost away at Atletico. I think it was at this stage, it was their first defeat in 7 away knockout ties in the Champions League. So I think they're a fair price at 1.95. It's not something I'd be going overboard with, odds on away from home. But I think they're the most likely winners, yeah.
I don't know, man. That sounds like a pretty good price to me, given what you just said. Yeah, Juve tempting. Carlo, solid away win here, it sounds like.
I would bet on them to win, but don't expect them to destroy Lyon, because everything we've seen from Juventus this season, even though they've been getting the results, their performances have been really, really bad. And Maurizio Sarri was brought in to kind of bring about almost a culture change at Juventus, because under Max Allegri and Antonio Conte before then, Juventus were more kind of safety first, functional, kind of, and even counter-attacking football. Sarri was brought in to make the performances better, which the idea was that would give them a better chance of winning in the Champions League. That hasn't really happened. The football has been largely kind of dour and disjointed football. There have been a few small steps. They played better at the weekend against Spal. They played a kind of a hybrid 4-4-2 formation, which kind of transforms into a 4-3-3 when they're attacking. And they look better in that game. But the performances haven't been good. And if you actually look at the expected goals this season, they're about 13 points up on what their XG is. So they've been getting away with it. And the reason why is because of that man, Cristiano Ronaldo, and to a lesser extent Dybala, because those two have been bailing Juventus out all season. They've been absolutely incredible. I mean, Ronaldo, like Mark said, he's scored 11 games in a row, which has equalled Gabriel Batistuta's league record, and he's absolutely on fire. So if you're going to back anyone to score in this game, to score the first goal, you have to go with Ronaldo. If not Ronaldo, Dybala, who's Juventus' top scorer in the Champions League this season. He's got a beautiful free kick against Atletico in the group stages. A moment of magic from those two is probably what I could see in this game. And yeah, if I had to bet, I'd probably go maybe a 1-goal Juventus victory, with maybe Ronaldo scoring the first goal.
Okay, I'm still convinced that Juve to win is a good bet, brothers.
Yes.
It is, isn't it?
I agree. Not a great deal more to add, to be honest. I think the guys have pretty much nailed it. I think Juventus haven't been wildly convincing away from home, but it's the first leg of a knockout tie. I think they are demonstrably better than Lyon in pretty much every area of the pitch. So I think they probably do win it. I think getting a shade of odds on is a very fair price. I wouldn't go, as Mark said, I wouldn't go overboard with it, but certainly a mid-stakes Juventus win would do for me.
Okay, let's move on and talk about Chelsea Bayern, and I know Brothers is going to have a lot to say about his beloved Chelsea hosting the Bundesliga champions. Obviously, Bayern Munich heading to West London to take on an unpredictable Chelsea side. Chelsea 4.3 to win on the night, Bayern at 1.84, so heavy odds on favourites, with the draw at 4.2. Obviously, Chelsea having a big win at the weekend in a local derby against Spurs at Stamford Bridge. We also had Bayern Munich beating Paderborn, the bottom side in the Bundesliga, by 3-2, but they conceded 2 goals against Paderborn. They have been shipping goals as well as scoring absolutely loads, Bayern Munich. So it feels like, brothers, and you might be optimistic and have a small wager on Chelsea because of your inclination, but it feels like this is going to be a goals fest.
Yes. I think as a Chelsea fan, I have to sort of set that aside for a minute and recognise that Chelsea defensively are poor. For whatever reason, even when Rudiger's come back, we make far too many mistakes. And I think the thing with Chelsea, when they're especially vulnerable, oddly enough, is when they go ahead, is that they seem to switch off a little bit and like to sort of almost sit on it. Now, I mean, what was interesting was going into the game at the weekend, there was a lot of chat about who was going to score goals for Chelsea. There was no proper goal threat, with Abraham having been injured and coming sort of back, and the Juve story, and Batshuayi being disappointing. So I think if I'm trying to be as neutral as possible, I look at this game, and Bayern have been in fantastic form. They have carried on scoring a ton of goals. So there's no reason to suspect that Chelsea aren't going to be conceding at least once or twice in this game. I think if you look at Bayern's away record in the Champions League, they've scored 2 or more in, I think, something like 11 of the last 12 away matches. And of course, they had that stunning group victory over Spurs in the group stages, which is fairly terrifying as a Chelsea fan. So I think looking at the game, Chelsea will look at it and say, well, how do we progress in this tie? If we sit back and invite Bayern onto us, they're going to score enough in this first leg to make it very difficult, the away leg. I think so. Chelsea have to try and strike the balance between being positive and trying to stay as secure as possible at the back. I think Bayern played at 5 at the back at the weekend, which against Paderborn, and were pretty terrible at the back, to be fair. I mean, Paderborn scored a couple of goals which were not good goals defensively for Bayern. I expect them to go back to a back 4 for this game. But Bayern do let in goals, and that's where Chelsea will look at the game and see some light. So I think the way to approach it is probably to look at goals, because I think Chelsea have to approach it positively. I can't see them keeping a clean sheet. So, taking over 3 goals at around even money, again, I think is a good play. If unless Chelsea decide that they want to try and keep a clean sheet at all costs and then try and nick something in the away leg. But I don't think they've got the capability to do that. So, goals for me.
Okay, they did finish the group with a +19 goal difference, Bayern Munich, which is pretty extraordinary if you think about it. They scored 16 goals in their 3 away games as well. I mean, pretty incredible statistics. Mark, you watch a lot of Bundesliga. Are we expecting lots of goals at Stamford Bridge?
Yeah, I'd kind of echo everything there that Broadrick has said. I'm expecting goals. I do expect Bayern to win the match, but I look at the match odds for this game, and Bayern at 1.85-ish. It's quite short. They were 2.2 for that game away at Spurs. When City and Liverpool have been to Stamford Bridge in the last 2 years, they've been odds against. So you're saying that 2 teams who are at the top of the Champions League outright market, City and Liverpool, were bigger prices than Bayern Munich are to win the first leg of a knockout tie away from home. So obviously, I think all logic suggests that Bayern are fair favourites to win this match, but excuse me, at that price, it's a bit off-putting. Even if Bayern are slipping into beast mode in the Bundesliga recently, they've really kind of, despite what happened on Friday night, they have been absolutely fantastic since Hansi Flick's taken charge. I think 9 of their 10 wins have been by 2 or more goals, and even the games that they lost against Leverkusen and Gladbach, they were, supremely dominating in that game, or in those games as well. And you look at Chelsea at the weekend, obviously a bit of a confidence booster against Spurs, but I did think Spurs looked very leggy. They had to play that game against Leipzig less than 72 hours earlier. They looked kind of poor, a bit out of shape, and Chelsea took advantage. So, it's going to be a very tough game. But there are opportunities in this Bayern team to get at them. And Nicolas Süle, their best centre-half, is out for the season. Alphonso Davies has been absolutely outstanding at left-back, but more going forward than defensively. He can be caught out of position. And also Boateng and Alaba aren't exactly the centre-back partnership to fill you huge amounts of confidence either. So I think if Chelsea are aggressive in their approach, they have a chance of, at least getting a couple of goals against this Bayern team, who are very susceptible at the back as well. So yeah, goals for me would be the play, just because I think Bayern are slightly too short.
Carlo, Chelsea are really big underdogs in this tie. They're really big underdogs to get forward. They're big underdogs to win at home this week. Can you see them making the quarterfinals?
No.
Okay. Let's move on.
Their defense is a disaster. So, sorry, brothers. I mean, you just have to look at the number of goals that they've been conceding. I mean, they couldn't even keep a clean sheet against the Tottenham team with no strikers. I mean, you could have put us four as the back four against that Tottenham strike force. I think we would have kept a clean streak. So yeah, I can't see it. I think the Chelsea's defence and the goalkeeper looks like Willy Caballero is going to be go. I mean, none of the defence, none of the centre backs fill me with confidence. To be honest, I can see Bayern scoring at least a couple in this first league. I mean, Robert Lewandowski this season. I mean, all of Bayern's attack. There's a lot of firepower there, but Lewandowski, I think he scored 42 goals for club and country this season. We're still in February. I mean, you're looking at someone that could hit 70 goals by the end of the season. The way that he's going, I mean, he could be reaching that incredible season that Messi had, back in 2012 or whenever it was. So I mean, yeah, you can see Lewandowski scoring in this game. The one positive for Chelsea is that they did look a little bit. They switched to a 3-4-2-1. And I think that's probably the formation that he should go with against Bayern. Although as Bayern kind of attack with three, I mean, it's a 4-2-3-1, but it can be seen as a 4-3-3. That could be a concern against that formation. So yeah, I do worry for Chelsea a little bit in this tie. I have to be honest.
All right. Let's move on and talk about the final game on the programme today. It's Napoli against Barca. You can get the Spanish champions to win at the Stadio San Paolo at around about 2.24. Napoli 3.40 and the draw 3.72. We mentioned that Barcelona regained top spots in La Liga at the weekend with a 5-0 win over Eibar at the Camp Nou. The best news for them, not just the victory, the fact that Leo Messi scored 4 of those goals. He'd gone, I think it was 4 games without scoring, which is a long time for Messi, but he's back in form and scored 4 times at the weekend. Napoli won at the weekend also. They won 2-1 at Brescia. They've won 6 of the last 7 games in all competitions, Napoli, but they remain a really unpredictable side. They beat Juventus and then a couple of weeks later lost at home to Lecce, and then the game after that knocked Inter out of the Coppa Italia. You're not entirely sure what you're going to get with Napoli, but at home they remain pretty strong. Remember, they have beaten Liverpool already this season in the Champions League. Carlo, tell us a little bit more about Napoli and why they might have a chance in this game.
Well, it's just been a really bizarre. Now, asked me, I mean, when the draw was made, did Napoli have any chance of beating Barcelona in this tie? I'd have said bet your house on a Barcelona not only going through but winning, handsomely. But Napoli, they have improved a little bit recently. They've won 6 of their last 7 games. Their record this season in the big games, in the showpiece matches, has been really good. I mean, you mentioned some of those games. In the last month, they've beaten Juventus, they've beaten Inter, they've beaten Lazio. This season, even during the midst of their crisis under Carlo Ancelotti, I mean, at one point they went 9 games without a win under Ancelotti before he was sacked. Even under Ancelotti, they beat Liverpool at home. They drew with Liverpool at Anfield. They only just lost to Juventus at the start of the season away from home because of a bizarre own goal in the last minute by Koulibaly. Otherwise, they would have drawn that game at Juventus as well. So in the big games, they've been doing really well. It's just that against the smaller teams, they've been, like you mentioned, they lost to Lecce 3-2 at home 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they've got a problem with motivation. There's been a bit like at Barcelona. There's a kind of a bit of an institutional crisis there. There's a bit of a civil war between the players and the president. There was a player mutiny earlier in the season when the president tried to call a training camp for them after they drew with Salzburg after a bad run of form. And the players being sacked. There's a few players like Alan who are really, there's a lot of bad blood there between the supporters and the players. So there's a lot of problems behind the scenes at Napoli, but they seem to be able to motivate themselves for the big games. Now, if you ask me who's going to go through, of course, Barcelona are still favourites, significant favourites. But I think that you can't rule Napoli out of this tie. And we've seen with Barcelona, especially away from home in the last 2 seasons, that, you know, they're shaky away from home. So in this first leg especially, it wouldn't be a bad bet that Napoli could even get a narrow victory in this first leg. Whether they'll go through, I don't know. But they're in them with a chance.
Brothers, you quite fancy Napoli in this one, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, for many of the reasons Carlo's touched on, the recent sort of improvement in form. I mean, I bow to no one for my sort of disdain for Gennaro Gattuso as a manager. I don't think he's equipped to be a manager of a top side, but you know, he is capable of galvanising players, and he's capable of injecting a bit of passion, which I think weirdly was what Napoli was missing earlier in the season. No, exactly. You know, and I think one of the reasons that they've had this uptick is their attitude has improved under him. Although, again, for the reasons Carlo touched on, they're very in and out still with their performances. I think the main reason that I like Napoli actually is more to do with Barcelona than Napoli in this game. I think if you look at the way that Barcelona have been playing this season, and obviously they've changed managers, they struggle, and away from home especially, and in this competition, they just don't put in some very good performances. In 2-leg football, they kind of take the view, especially if they're away in the first leg, they can kind of get a result in the first leg and then turn it around in the new camp in the second. So possibly off the back of their 4-0 loss at PSG the other year, which they turn around, they have this sort of unshakable belief that if they get them back home in the second leg, they can do whatever they like. Looking at their away form in the Champions League for the last few years, I think they've won 8 of 19 away games, which for a team of their quality is astonishing. I mean, they've struggled this season in the group stages. I mean, there's no way they deserve to beat Slavia Prague 2-1. They beat Inter 2-1 in a game that, again, Inter dominated. So if you look at their form and the way that they play, they would be very happy with a draw in this match. And I think even a narrow loss they will view as fine, because they'll go back to the new camp and Messi will score a hat-trick and everything will be okay. So for me, this is a match where there's a very good chance it could be a draw. I don't see Barcelona winning it. I really don't. I think Napoli will approach this in the same way they did with the Liverpool game, and be very strong tactically. They're missing Koulibaly, which is obviously a huge issue for them at the back. But again, I think that they have the players and the crowd to make a little bit of a fragile Barcelona at the moment, sit back and just try and come away with something. I don't think Barca are going to win this game.
Okay, let's see. Let's see what kind of atmosphere as well at the Estadio San Paolo. I remember I travelled there to cover a game with Real Madrid. I think it was in 2017. They opened the stadium at 3:45 in the afternoon. By 5:30, there was about 30,000 people in the stadium. It was pretty incredible. So I'm sure there's going to be a similar kind of atmosphere for the visit of Barcelona. Mark, briefly, anything to add?
Not really, Phil. I think the guys have covered it superbly. As Carlo said, Napoli have come alive in the matches that matter, really. More recently against Juventus, they were really tenacious, high pressing, excellent performance, fully deserved of the win. Inter and Lazio in the Coppa Italia as well. And I think, as you say, the San Paolo can be a formidable venue, really, for visiting teams to try and get a result. And Barcelona's away record in knockout football in Champions League has not been good. 1 win, 2 draws, 5 defeats in their last 8. By an aggregate of 2 goals scored and 17 conceded. They've also failed to win in the last 5 trips to Italy, 4 defeats in that time, failed to score in the last 4 games as well. No Suarez as well. I know Messi and Griezmann are starting to find their range a little bit, but they're still pretty pedestrian in possession at the moment, Barcelona. And I think this is going to be a very difficult game for them to go and get a victory. So for me, it's about siding with Napoli.
Yes, very, very convincing arguments made there to potentially side with Napoli. All right, that's just about all we've got time for on the programme. Before we go, let's get the guys' best bets of the week. So we'll start with you, Mark, in 10 seconds. Best bet of the week, why?
Napoli plus 0.5 Asian handicap, just shy of 1.8. As I mentioned, Barcelona's away record is very sketchy, and Napoli are starting to find their range. So, I don't see them losing this match.
Oh, we lost Mark. There we go. You're back, Mark. You were telling us why that was your best bet of the week.
Sorry, Barcelona's away record is very patchy at the moment, especially in knockout football. Napoli has started to find their range. I think Napoli with half a goal started is very fair, just shy of 1.8.
Okay, Mark, thank you. We lost you there, a bit of a robot, but there we go. Napoli plus 0.5 on the Asian handicap. Carlo, what's your best bet of the week?
I'm going to go really aggressive. I'm going to go 3.5 goals, over 3.5 goals for Chelsea versus Bayern. Guaranteed goals in that game.
All right, thank you very much. Everyone's turning into a robot. So before we go, Brothers, what's your best bet of the week?
Mark's done my homework, so I'm going to switch from Napoli and I'm going to take over 3 goals in the Real Madrid versus Man City game.
There we go. Those are our best bets of the week, over 3 goals there in the Real Madrid Manchester City game. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Also, if you're listening to the Matchbook Betting Podcast as a podcast, make sure you subscribe to us on your preferred podcasting app. We'll be back very soon indeed to continue our look at the Champions League. We'll see you next time. Bye.